One of the biggest challenges the industry has is really staying away and ahead of all these sophisticated attacks and threats while adapting to the unique regulatory requirements. We're not just protecting data, we're protecting trust, we're protecting revenue and the operation of the casino. With the rise of AI, it's going to be more deep fakes, more synthetic fraud, more machine attacks. And so we need to get smarter defenses and we need to test them.
Melissa Aarskaug, Global Vice President at Bulletproof, a global IT and cybersecurity firm.
Cybersecurity is one of the biggest challenges we face worldwide because we all are in digital devices. How do you see the role of shaping the present and future of cybersecurity?
I think it's tech and AI. I personally don't believe they're optional. I think everybody needs to be using them. It's really important to not be scared of these tools and to try to use them because they really can enrich your life.
If you're still exploring how AI and emerging technologies will shape our future, you're in the right place. Subscribe now to stay updated about the latest conversations with industry trailblazers. Gain unique perspectives on how to fine-tune these technologies in a human-centric way. Don't miss out, join the community, and stay informed. Hello and welcome to the Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast, powered by citiesabc.com, businessabc.net, and wisdomia.ai. We keep profiling the global leaders, the thought leaders, and the people making a change in the world that is more and more disrupted and inspired by technologies, by artificial intelligence, by a lot of different things, but especially what we celebrate in this series and profile is the doers. Today I'm particularly excited to welcome Melissa Aarskaug, Global Vice President at Bulletproof, a global IT and cybersecurity firm. Bulletproof is a member of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, MISA, and holds a Microsoft Threat Protection Advanced Specialisation. Melissa is a Tech and Cyber Growth Strategist, speaker, host, and community builder. She has over 13 plus years working for Gaming Laboratories International, GLI, a global leader in providing testing, certification, and professional services to the gaming industry. With laboratory locations on 6 continents, GLI serves over 475 jurisdictions worldwide. Prior to GLI, Melissa also worked as a project engineering manager, building the world's largest concrete bridge at that time. Melissa also managed investments at a commercial and industrial real estate firm, Las Vegas Investments, with a portfolio valued at over $100 million. Melissa has been recognized as the emerging leader in gaming, 40 Under 40, presented by Global Gaming Business and the Innovation Group, and supported by IAGA and regulatory management counselors. She also received the Patty Becker Pay It Forward Award. Melissa hosts Executive Connect, a platform and podcast focused on alternative leadership strategies. The podcast features C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and experts from diverse industries. She speaks at over 20 conferences annually and regularly coaches teams and individuals on business growth, leadership, and cybersecurity. Melissa founded Young Nonprofit Professionals Network, YNPN, Austin, and is a Charis Master Negotiator and C4 Executive Coach. She serves on multiple advisory boards and volunteers with organizations such as Global Gaming Women, the Society of Women Engineers, the American Society of Civil Engineers, Austin Technology Council, Austin Women in Technology, Toastmasters International, Ballet Austin, Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Junior League volunteer in Austin, Las Vegas, and Reno for 15 plus years.
Melissa Aarskaug, it's a great pleasure to have you here. I'm quite excited to profile you in our show. You have I would say, a profile out of the box because you have a lot of different expertises and a wonderful energy, but as well a level of expertise that goes in a lot of different directions. So I would like to start by highlighting a bit of, if I would go back a couple of years and you would think about what you're doing now, what was the areas or the things that took you through this career and some moments that make you become a global expert in engineering from the tech and cybersecurity industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat with your listeners today. My career began very untraditionally. I guess I started my first job was really in banking, worked my way through banking. And then after I got my degree in civil and environmental engineering, I worked as an engineer and doing design, bridge design, environmental design, hydraulics and hydrology. And then, funny enough, a friend of mine asked me to apply for a job with another engineering company. And so I did what I thought was apply for that engineering company. And I applied for the job I now have in the casino gaming industry. So I've always really found my way or found myself very interested in technology, but I think engineering gave me a very strong foundations for system thinking and technology thinking, solving complex problems. In the tech world, it moves really fast these days. And so I think that really gave me the edge starting my career in engineering and then leveraging, my, sales personality to help me build the bridge between being a technologist and being an extroverted kind of person. So um, it's been a really interesting journey for me. I've been at the company for almost 14 years, and I've had various different roles at the organization since I've been there.
So you are a woman in tech, a woman in tech, and you have quite a lot of, uh, I would say, fantastic overview with a very technical overview. So I would like to go a bit further just in the first question still. Um, it was someone else that brought you to go to this industry. It was what it would be for someone young that is looking and listening to us. What was the moment where you decided I'm going to engineering, I'm going to cybersecurity, or was something that happened in the process and at different times?
So that's a fantastic question. How I ended up even in engineering was I was really good at math, really good at science. And I had been walking to the restroom, and a very well-dressed man asked me, "Hey, are you good at math?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm good at math." And it was the dean of the College of Engineering for one of the colleges. I didn't even think about applying for, so I applied for that role and that position at the university, and I ended up getting it. So what I would tell younger people now, technology is a really fascinating field. It's always getting better. We're always innovating. If we, layer in AI, it's getting so much better, and machine learning, that it's such a fun industry no matter what you like. If you're an artist or you're a marketing person or you're an engineer, I think technology has a place for so many different people and so many different backgrounds.
No, that's very impressive, and it starts with university. And I always like to look at what are the moments that change. I think especially now that we are in a very full scale, always changing time. So as the global vice president of Bulletproof, you've been having multiple different tasks, and your role touches in supporting top gaming and lottery organizations. So I would like to, this is quite a big thing because of course, if someone acts special, these kind of big players, that's a lot of constraints and a lot of risks and data protection, a lot of things. So tell us a bit about this process first, because I always like to demystify for people listening to us what it takes to be, first of all, looking at cybersecurity and engineering top and supporting top gaming and lottery organizations, but as well the challenge we face overall when it comes to this kind of work that you do in Bulletproof.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bulletproof is the technology arm of a company called Gaming Laboratories International, and they certify electronic gaming equipment around the world. And the beautiful thing about that is gaming is such a high stakes environment. I would say it's one of the most regulated industries that there are right now. I look at in the entire industry, you're touching sports betting, you're touching horse tracks, you're touching race tracks, land-based casinos, a bunch of different types of industries. But not just only that, you're also banking and crypto is getting really popular in the gaming industry. So we're not just protecting data, we're protecting trust, we're protecting revenue. and the operation of the casino, which is very unique. And it's very important to keep the organization up and running so they can collect those dollars via slot machines, a bet, or whatever the gaming product is. So one of the biggest challenges the industry has is really staying away and ahead of all these sophisticated attacks and threats while adapting to the unique regulatory requirements. Every jurisdiction around the world, we test for 475 of them. All of them have different regulations and rules and requirements. So if you're a company that wants to go to a couple of them, it's one thing, but if you're a company that wants to hit hundreds of them, it's a whole nother ball game. And so it's really about making sure the industry is safe and secure and certified and protected, not only just from, what we'll call the bad guys, but also from making sure they're compliant with all the regulatory standards they're going to touch. Because it's not just the gaming standards. They may touch other things like HIPAA compliance for healthcare because it's a tribe that owns a healthcare facility, or they may touch PCI because they're taking credit cards. So it's a lot of different regulations that's not just gambling.
So Bulletproof is part, like you mentioned, of Gaming Laboratories International, GLI, which is a major organization, like you mentioned, that talks a lot of different parts of gaming. So gaming is becoming massive. Well, not becoming, it's massive. We're talking about 4.5 billion people playing games every day. And of course, within the games, you have all the different areas you have, because there's the data privacy, there's the, even right now, behavior data, there's protection of credit cards, debit cards, there's a lot of things involved. And of course, you have a lot of different verticals, like you mentioned. So I would say, from this experience of a decade working with this organization, what would be the most impactful learning that you got this? And especially, you have over 475 jurisdictions. There's a huge component, not only of complexity around technology, cybersecurity, but law, and a lot of different variations. I would like to hear the experience and how you've been juggling all these things that are quite complex for people that are behind the scenes.
Absolutely. There's so many lessons that I've learned in this industry, which is one of the reasons I stay in this industry. And I joke, when I first started, I'm like, oh, I'll be here for a year, I'll learn something new. And it's almost been 14 years because there's so much to learn. I think originally the biggest lesson that I learned originally out of the gate was what worked in one state, like what worked in Michigan, did not work in Wisconsin, and what worked in Europe didn't work in other countries. It was all very different. So you really have to understand not just the place that the gaming is going on, but their cultural needs, what they like to play, what they don't like to play, who the people are that are playing. So it taught me, most importantly out of the gate, what works in one region might not work in another. And really the biggest lesson I've learned over the last few years is that innovation has to be paired with integrity. Otherwise, your brand is not trusted or respected. So a lot of times I've seen people do a lot of great things with innovation, but skipped on integrity. And they maybe, cut corners to save money. But I've saw firsthand how this has really damaged some casinos, damaged some suppliers. And without those strong regulatory partnerships, clear communication, and commitment to fairness, it's really helping move the industry forward. But there has to be integrity there, and you have to do what you say when you say it, whether you're a casino that's telling a player, or whether you're a supplier that's selling to a casino, or whether you're a test lab that's testing for the suppliers. Integrity and innovation have to work together.
So you touch a very important thing. So because in the end of the day, when it comes to this kind of, well, any activity online, there's a huge amount of sensibilities that you have to consider. But this is becoming incredibly more important as you get into high-profile social media 24/7, as we have AI taking over most of our activities, and as well we have a lot of layers. So you are as well a thought leader. and you've been working and rethinking, and of course, you're a great communicator as well. So, as a thought leader, you start a podcast and you're leading a podcast that touches a lot of these different things. And as well, I know that there's a book coming. So tell us about how you put this work as a technologist and as a leader of a company of technology and thinking this and reflecting this, because I think it's a quite important thing. And one of the things that I want to touch for our audience, especially as the more I speak with personalities from VCs, and I have, of course, I've been having 400 people in this podcast show. One of the challenges I find is there's levels of expertise that you have that I will not have, and we're all learning with each other. But then the challenge is that I got out of this level of expertise, and we have 99% of people that don't understand what you're doing. So I would like to see how we use the podcast and our experience, and as well the upcoming book, to reflect and actually to bring this to an audience, but as well to make sure people use this and learn. Like you said, ethics, there's technology, there's digital literacy, there's AI literacy, AI divide. So there's a lot of things here.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the underlying, if I go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, is when I started my career, I experienced a lot of success in my career. Very young, I had a lot of opportunity to do big things for the age I was at. But I would tell you, I didn't have, I'm going to call it the life hacks. I didn't have the hacks or the knowledge about what imposter syndrome was, or, being fearful to speak up in a meeting, or all these little things that seemed so basic. But as we go and work through our life, you keyed in right on it, is we're not experts at everything. And it maybe at the beginning part of your career, you're not fearful, but as you juggle more and have more responsibility, and you're the CEO of a company, you have more responsibility. And so what I was finding in dealing with executives and business owners and founders is things like imposter mindset, fear, understanding where to invest their money. All these topics kept coming up over and over. How do I build my brand? How do I network? And for me, it was actually quite shocking. I'm like, wait, I would look at them as a mentor, and I'd think, wait, how are you struggling with that? You already know all this stuff. And so what I realized is a lot of people kept asking me the same question. So those topics became what I would talk about on my podcast. So if I had X people ask me about having courage, or, what it looks like to learn about AI or understand AI, I would bring that out and talk about it, learning about solo Ks or raising money or your taxes. I've covered a vast array of topics. And so the underlying current for me was, sharing life hacks and quick shortcuts for people that they didn't have to learn through what I call, the dumb hacks, because I've had to learn what I call the dumb tax a lot of times in my life. I had to make the mistake once and learn from it. So I was hoping that I could share that knowledge with, my goal every podcast is really just to share with one person and make one person's life better. And then the book, I wrote the book. The first part of it's called Renaissance Women, and we're still fleshing out the last part with our publisher right now. But the book is all about a different way of looking at leadership, and it layers in the way that I was raised and the way I grew up was go to school, get a good job, get married, buy a house, and have children. And the way I've lived my life, and a lot of the senior executive women in my circle, is very untraditional. So we're opening up and unpacking what it looks like to live life in the new age, where people are having kids later, or they're not having kids, or they're not buying houses. And so we're unpacking all that, and why it's okay to not have all the answers and to just meet you where you are in your career. And so I could share more of details later, but that's really the underlying thread of the podcast and the book.
So on that level, I think you touch a very important thing, is how we make, first of all, how we demystify a lot of these things. I think there's a big problem in touching. And for instance, especially the areas that you touch as a professional and even as a thought leader, because cybersecurity is one of the biggest challenges we face worldwide, because we all are in digital devices, most of humanity, from our grandparents to our children, and there's a lot of layers. And as well, of course, when it comes to the industries that you are touching, like gaming, lotteries, and so forth, becomes even much more sensitive. So for this work, you've been working, and your company works closely with Microsoft Intelligence Security Association. I would like to touch this because I think, first of all, if you could tell us about what is this work and this collaboration, but as well, I would like to see how do you see the role of shaping the present and future of cybersecurity, and how your solutions and your work as a thought leader, as an industry leader, can align with these innovations. And especially, I think the challenge is what can we do to avoid this? Because of course, like you said, just one hack in one of these games or one of these organizations can create a lot of damage, to say less. So there's a lot of pressure as well. But I would like to contextualize this.
Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, Microsoft wasn't considered a security company, right? And Microsoft is not just a tech provider, it's an innovation driver in the security space. And so they've invested in things like threat intelligence, zero trust frameworks, AI enabled defenses. And so those are things like, if I live now in Austin, Texas, and if I'm in, say, London, am I supposed to be in London? So what happens is by enabling AI, it can learn the user on the computer and what they're doing and when they work and how they work. And it really helps make your environment safe and secure. So it notifies organizations that have a security operations center and leveraging these tools when something is not correct. And at Bulletproof, we implement Microsoft technologies, but also add a deep layer of expertise in the casino gaming industry.
So I want to touch a bit more. So going back here, because I think one of the things that when you talk about cybersecurity is defining cybersecurity, and of course there's a lot of myths here because there's a lot of first of all, there's a lot of news about, okay, company A was hacked, company B was hacked, the company C is hacked, and as well, okay, all this data is right now available. And we know, of course, I don't want to go too much in the dark web, which becomes a much more sensitive subject. But for people that are listening to us, and people, of course, you touch an industry that touches millions of people and thousands of companies. How do you see this challenge that we're facing right now when it comes to cybersecurity and all the threats that are evolving rapidly? And as well, I would like to touch a bit the organizations, especially in your industry, that what you think the organizations need to do to tackle this, and specifically for people listening to us, I think the assurance we need, because we need assurance, and actually the economy and business normally runs on credibility of trust. So the trust is the key element here.
Yeah, and I think I've been saying this for years. It's not if, it's when. And I know a lot of people have laughed it off, or they don't worry about it, and they think, okay, it's not going to happen to us, or if it does happen to us, we'll deal with it then. And that attitude just doesn't work anymore. And so what can people do? So, personal people that, are worried about their own security and their own home, things like making sure they have robust passwords, making sure that when they get a phone call that calls them that says, "Hi, is this John?" and it's not John's phone, they don't give them information they shouldn't. They don't click on things in their email that doesn't make sense. Would you be getting a $10,000 gift card somewhere? And so just kind of thinking before clicking is really one of the things we need to train ourselves. And when we log in places, making sure that those login passwords are updated regularly, and it's not password 1234, and that it's a password that is, we used to say, 8 characters, then we said 12 characters, and now we're saying 16 characters. and that are not, password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, but an actual, uppercase, lowercase, exclamation points, and they're hard to break into, and really changing all your passwords there. But when it comes to businesses, training your employees is so important. And I know a lot of people have over the years said, "Oh, well, our employees aren't smart enough to figure this out." Well, I disagree. I think all of the employees have company cell phones, they have company computers, and they have a lot of important information, IP of the company, information about the company, and it needs to be protected. So training them first, making sure they're trained and they understand and they realize that their CEO doesn't send emails at 2 o'clock in the morning asking them to go get, $20,000 of Starbucks gift cards, and those are called phishing. So those are phishing emails where people are sending you an email, hoping you click on something to take an action, to reset your Microsoft password or to reset any password. And then the opposite is the calls. So, social engineering is when somebody calls and tries to social engineer their way into getting more information. And so they can get into whatever it is they're trying to gain access to. So it's really important to train your employees, and it's really important to build a plan. I've dealt with some people that have incident response plans, but they haven't looked at it. Their insurance company has asked them to prepare one, but they've never run the plan and they don't update the plan. So it's not really a workable plan. So getting clear on what you're trying to protect, getting clear on what the plan is, running the plan, and then testing the plan. And then all of that does cost money. And so before all of it, you really got to get a budget together. We're going to allocate this much money to cybersecurity. Once you have the money allocated, then piecemeal what you can do. And maybe it's one project this year and it's another project next year. But doing a little bit is better than doing nothing, because I've seen it in our industry where a casino would get hit with an attack, and then a few miles down the road, another casino, and then a few miles down the road, one would get, not attacked, and the fourth casino would. And the third casino didn't, because it had, some security tools in place, and they weren't able to get where they needed to get quick enough. So they just went on to the next one.
So I want to touch here you touched the most important thing. For instance, people, how do behave, how each of us, because I speak for myself as well, how do we behave with our personal cybersecurity and digital kind of identity? Because I think what is happening right now is becoming much more sophisticated, because now we have humans and AI agents interacting. You're going to have a lot of people using AI agents as malware or ransomware. So I would like to, you mentioned that, for instance, casinos or gaming companies, the work they do to mitigate this risk. So can you use first of all, one case study? Because I think sometimes it's common sense, like you said, not using passwords like 1 2 3 4. But I've been in a lot of big organizations where they effectively do 1 2 3 4 1 1 1 1, because people just want to get something fast, and it's quite complicated, of course, because sometimes you forget the password, you sometimes makes this, and as well, for instance, one of the biggest challenges that happened, even me, and for my audience, I think it's good to share this, is, for instance, plugins in websites. For instance, WordPress is 40% of the internet, and recently a couple of plugins that infected thousands of websites. So there's a lot of contextualized. And for instance, I always use the case study as well of, for instance, the Panama Papers happened mostly because there was a website, very basic, that the organization in Panama had, and it was very easy to hack. So I would like to hear your views on this, and especially you are in an industry that is very sensitive, because you deal with data, is entertainment. Like they say, whatever you do in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, but it stays in the internet as well. So I would like to hear you on that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I grew up in Vegas, so it's a funny thing. It's never left, but no, it is true. It is true. I think, I had a client recently that they had a website, and anybody that hit the website doing things, it wasn't actually their website. It was somebody else's landing page that were taking in potential goers of that casino's information, so they'd enter, apply for a reward card, book a hotel, all the things on the property's website, but it wasn't actually the property's website. It was taken over by somebody. And so you're dead right. It's not getting any easier, and it's not getting any safer. And so what can you do? I say trust but verify. So find the right partners, trust your employees, but verify everything's been done correctly, because it's one little teeny tiny thing that can happen where a potential hacker can scale in an organization. So maybe the Wi-Fi is really secure at the casino, but they have open ports on the wall that plug back into the slot accounting system. So somebody could easily plug into the wall. And maybe that was just accidentally missed because somebody was moving a kiosk around the casino, and, they forgot to shut that connection down. But I think it's these small little, you know, holes that happen that are easier to break into. And with the rise of AI, it's going to be more deep fakes, more synthetic fraud, more machine attacks. And so we need to get smarter defenses, and we need to test them. So once we put the tools in place, they need to be tested, and they need to be tested regularly. I know, I would say several years ago, we would talk about getting a penetration test, and that, in some clients' minds, if you did a penetration test, that equaled, you were secure if the vulnerabilities weren't that bad. I would say that those days are kind of long gone. Just doing a one and forgetting about it is kind of long gone. We're now moving into the space where organizations need to be testing regularly. It's not a one time a year thing. It's engaging an organization that understands cybersecurity and that can help you work through what's changing and shifting. Because it's a big burden for people and organizations that run IT departments where, if it's a large casino and they have only a handful of IT people, they're doing a lot of other things like, onboarding and offboarding people, helping with the infrastructure, helping with anything else IT related. And so they don't have as much time to focus on, phishing campaigns, testing your employees. They don't have time to do, regular scanning of their environment. So it's really best to kind of insource and outsource some of this now. Find a partner that can help you understand what you have, and then continually test it for you, not just one time a year, maybe monthly, and maybe even quarterly, depending on your budgets.
Yeah, this is a key element, and I hope everyone listen, take it serious, because when it comes as a big thing, and it really disrupts everything. So one of the things you've been working is, of course, when you are in this massive responsibility of being on the top of cybersecurity for big organizations, is the innovation. So I'm sure you get all the best and worst case studies, and in your experience, I'm sure you found some kind of radical, as well, I would say, some very crazy accidents or incidents, and sometimes negligences. So in one end, I would like if you could touch just one case study of something that really went very bad, because I would like to touch these case studies, of course, whatever you can share with all the privacy, but just on the top level. And second, how can we innovate? Because the challenge right now is the innovation, especially when it comes to AI related with cybersecurity. You mentioned deepfakes. Ransomware is becoming massive. We're talking about $1 trillion of issues coming out of this. And one thing I want to touch, especially because of your area, is that when you are gaming, when you are relaxing, when you're doing these things in entertainment, we tend to be, we have a lot of films that portray this better than all whatever I can say, but it can become really a different version of yourself when you're playing or when you're doing all these things. So sometimes there's as well a huge amount of how much you expose yourself, because even if you are in front of any device, there's more and more an integration of sensors, a kind of integration of data that is transferred wherever you will like it or not. So I'd like to see the innovation around this, and as well how we protect ourselves and potential one case of what not to do, besides the changing of passwords?
Yeah, and I think, you and I are hosts of podcasts and our voices are out there and it's easy to make a video that's not you and me and tell it to say, whatever and you know call our significant others or our family members and tell them that, we're held hostage or whatever the case may be. A lot of these stories are very scary, right? I've had a lot of people that I know that have had calls and they've transferred money that because they thought their grandchild was being held hostage somewhere. And so they paid somebody the money thinking that it was their grandchild and it wasn't. And it's the same thing in the industry. You know, I've seen, good size, decent size casinos, their employees walk a hacker around the property into their most important places in the casino and show them different parts of the casino. And it wasn't an executive on the phone. It was an actual hacker that had created a picture of the executive. And so the person on the phone that was part of the help desk thought they were talking to the head of their casino, and they were not talking to the head of their casino. They were talking to somebody else. And so these stories are real, they're true, and they're not always shared because in our industry, it's a very protected space. There's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of politics, and it's nobody wants to share what happened at their casinos with each other. And so it's unfortunate that the casinos can't collaborate, but I have so many stories, I don't even know which one to pick. That one just popped into my head. But those kind of stories, do you blame the employee? Was it something the employee? They were just trying to help the head of the casino solve a problem. But were they trained? Did 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 their IT department, HR department, any of their training software teach them what to do when something like that happened? We've seen a lot of those situations happen, social engineering in the gaming industry, and they're not slowing down. And so it's really important to do, like I was saying, to do this training. And even if, people feel like we're all going to be, taken over by AI bots and it's still important to train the people because sometimes they have the most information about the secrets within your organization.
Yeah, and this is, I think I love what you touched because I think people are not taking enough serious everything related with our identity and understanding this. I think it's very easy. Whereas I've been having, and I can share this with our audience, is I've been having multiple scammers creating entire fake websites of one of our company group websites. And for instance, the challenge one that happened is I had people contacting me. Okay, I was hacked. I lost in one case someone that lost like close to $100,000. And I was shocked, of course, but the challenge is, what can you do? And I did a lot of work trying to go and chase, like, for instance, multiple international organizations. And it's very difficult to put these organizations down. For instance, even in Instagram, I think I still have two people pretending to be me. And I have a verified account that they have 1 million followers. It's just on Instagram. So I think the challenge is how we cope with this, especially with the organizations. But this becomes much more sensitive when it comes to our personal data, and especially if you are gaming, if you go to a casino, if you are with your friends, if you get a bit drunk or do something that sometimes you don't do on a day-to-day. And I think this is going to be probably the biggest challenge as you go forward, because this is going to be probably on steroids. And that brings me to another question to you that I want to touch related with this. So you're working as well with organizations like the Global Gaming Women and the Society for Women Engineers. I think these organizations are key. And as well, they support diversity in tech, but at the same time, they support the idea of including women in leadership roles, but as well, a lot of learning and exchanging things between different players and personalities. So I would like for you to highlight these organizations in particular and other initiatives that you're doing for our audience, especially for people to go and get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take you back to earlier in my career. I was just around a lot of men in my career, young, from banking to engineering and gaming. And it was just normal to me. I didn't see it as good or bad or anything. It was what it was. And then it was some organizations that had brought it to my attention that there's this many percent of women in these fields, and Society of Women Engineers talks about how many women are in engineers. When I went to school, there was only a couple of women that were in engineering school. And so, funny enough, my board, I served as the president of the Society of Women Engineers. My board was all men. It was me and one other women and all men, because there weren't enough women to sit in the board seats. And so, or wanted to sit in the board seats. And so these organizations do really impactful work. And it's not about men and women, it's about both perspectives need to be at the table because we make each other better. Men's weaknesses sometimes are women's strengths, and women's weaknesses are sometimes men's strengths. And together, we build better companies, we build better communities, and we build a better world. And so, leaning into organizations like Global Gaming Women, Society of Women Engineers, Austin Women in Technology, the Chief Community, all these women's groups I'm a part of, the Emerging Leaders of Gaming. It's all to help women understand how to communicate better, how to build courage better, how to, take up space in a way that is positive and not subtracting from the organization, to have a different perspective and to really build them up in a way that they can do good for the companies they work for and the world that they live in, like I said.
Yeah, this organization, I'm a huge fan. I've been learning a lot with them, and I think, like you said, being a father of a young lady or young child, I understand how this is complex. And as well, one thing I find that I want to just probably provoke you a bit on that is that you are, besides being, of course, a woman in tech and as well in cybersecurity, which is two leading actually quite complex tasks and very sensitive ones, but you are as well a great communicator. So you actually managed to push that. So for people listening, one of the things I've been finding is young people that struggle. First of all, there's a big divide between people that study maths or STEM and people that study humanistics or more kind of related language and culture, different parts. And the universities are really getting into a big diversity kind of a bridge, or not diversity, I would say a big divide, because the ones that are not in tech are kind of not assuming the power of AI or the fear of missing. And then there's people that adopt. But there's a big challenge how we take this forward, and especially when it comes to cybersecurity. I feel that the challenge is really people have no clue. So this brings me to the question. So as someone that is a leader, an industry leader, you are seeing and studying the rise of AI, automation, and there's blockchain. You mentioned crypto, and crypto is one thing, but there's all the blockchain, the smart contracts industry that is a key thing. And for instance, a very simple thing most of people don't know, if you are in crypto, most of the things in crypto, anything you can see that is in the ledger, but people don't even know how to that. But of course, when it comes to the rise of AI and automation, and like you said, we're going to see incredible amounts of AI agents changing everything we're doing. So I would like to see how you see this changing the next generation. And you as a leader, how do you see this and your work in trying to, first of all, inspire and making people in these areas becoming better leaders, and the organizations that you deal in, because you deal with a lot of organizations around the world and young people, more advanced leaders and so forth.
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's tech and AI. I personally don't believe they're optional. I think everybody needs to be using them. It's just like any of the tools we use in our life, like our car or any of the other things. It's another tool that needs to be used. I know in my household, I have my children using AI to test them and retest them. So they're great students, but could they be better students? Because if they're A students today, they're going to get, lazy and compliant with school. So we use technology to teach them more and ask them better questions. So, all the kids in Texas now go to school on their laptops, and they have four choices at the school my kids are in to answer a question. And sometimes a lot of it they guess, I'm sure kids guess. But what if they didn't have the answer in a four box choice from? So we have the kids use AI. So I think it's such an important thing to be adding to your toolbox. And I think the best leaders I've worked with are deeply curious and unafraid of innovation. They invest in the people, not only the AI tools, and they understand that AI has to exist with people. It can't just be AI and it can't just be people. But I appreciate the leaders that embed that into their culture where they bring people together to communicate, and they're also maybe they're remote workers, maybe they use different AI tools for note taking at their job. But I think it's really important to not be scared of these tools and to try to use them because they really can enrich your life. Like I know for myself, I always, I'll think of something. I'm like, who said that? Where did that quote come from? And I'll type it into, Chat GPT or Gemini, and it'll tell me who gave me that quote. Because we forget more than than we remember as we get older. And so it's important to use these tools not as a way to take from our life, but to enrich our life. Or help me build show me the top places to see in London when I come visit London. A lot of times you might have to scour the internet, find the best places, but you can prompt ChatGPT, I only have 2 hours to spend in London. What are the top sites? And it will spit out the best sites in London. And so use it in your personal life. Get comfortable using it. Millions of people are using it every day. It's something not to be fearful of. It's something to really lean into.
No, I love that. So my last question, and I want to be respectful of your time. So one of the things you've been doing is you are a personality that thrives in your role in the Gaming Laboratories International, and you're expanding your reach as a thought leader through your podcast and public speaking engagement. Yeah, 5 minutes. And so you have expanding your role as a thought leader with your podcast and the public speaking engagements. But now you are as well, one of the work you do is driving innovation, cybersecurity, and leadership and business development, but you maintain a strong commitment to mentoring and community involvement. So I think this is a key thing. And I have a community listening to me. I would like to finish with that note and what you're doing on that direction, how people can engage with you, but how you juggle these different things as being family person and all these different things.
Yeah, it's the secret hack I figured out. It's I feel like so much of my career I spent putting knowledge and tools in my toolbox. So I have all these tools that I've learned over, the dumb tacks or mistakes or things I've achieved. And now it's really my turn to flip the script and pay it back to other people. So I really take that as, like a personal creed to pay it forward. But I really start my day, and I would tell all your leaders, I start my day centered in me first, always, every day, no exceptions, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or more minutes, because I've got to be okay in me before I can give to my family, to my job, to my community. So really taking time to give yourself the time that you need to relax and recoup and exercise and eat good meals. And I schedule it. Everything for me is very scheduled. We all have 168 hours in a week. How are you using them? And I map it out sometimes. Okay, I'm going to be traveling for work for 40 of them. Okay, I need to spend more time with my family on the weekend. So maybe I can't, record a podcast or write in my book or do the things I normally do on the weekend. And I really need to lean into my family. And I look at I don't really ever believe that there's full balance, balance across our family, balance across our careers. It's just a scale that is tipping all day, every day. And you just have to decide how it's tipping and be mindful of when it's out of the tip incorrectly is really key.
That's very special. And I can only, first of all, congratulate you for your fantastic work. For people listening to us, that a lot of things you can learn with Melissa. please sign up to our podcast and learn as well with that, because I think there's things that are available as well. I learn as much from you, Melissa, here as from a lot of other books or sometimes even a lot of courses I do. So that's a key element for me. So congratulations for your excellent work. It's been an honor to have you here. And I hope that our audience can learn a lot with you, as I've been learning with you this session and a lot of our talks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been a pleasure.